Glad you can join us for a book launch with Karen. If you're on there already, thanks very much for joining us promptly. And what we'll do is we'll just sort of hang around and sort of chat among ourselves just while the numbers build up. I can see the numbers building up there on the phone there, so thank you for joining us. And we'll talk among ourselves for a few moments. Good evening, Karen.
Good evening.
Hi there. Excellent. Good. Hopefully you're getting reasonably good audio and video. I have to confess that this is actually the first time we've done this in this format. So we'll be interested to hear your comments on how things have gone in the end. If I look as if I keep looking away, it's just because we've got a laptop at the side of me where hopefully somebody can keep me straight in case something's going desperately wrong and we lose a video feed or something like that. If we had something a bit more professional, then what we probably would have done at this point is we probably would have played the lovely arrangement of Cradling Song to have over the background. We do have it here, but I thought that would maybe just be a bridge too far with the technology.
Right.
That would have certainly been a lovely way to cover the few moments or so while folk are just logging in, finding their way to the page hopefully. And we're getting ready to get underway. Do you want to just tell me something? Is Tam Stevenson, I think, who played that particular arrangement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's Tam? Give Tam a name check.
Tam Stevenson is a member of our congregation here, member of the church family, part of our church family.
Uh-huh.
And he's a lovely character, and he's part of our praise band.
Right.
So he's been busy over the summer. Oh, sorry.
He's got his own CDs on, or his own material on YouTube. You can.
Yes, he does have his own. If you put his name into YouTube, you'll just find amazing pieces that Tam plays. He's
Yes.
an incredibly accomplished musician. He also put a video on Facebook during lockdown that went viral.
Okay.
So he's been playing music on Facebook during lockdown for people's pleasure and entertainment. And one of the videos was particularly entertaining, and that's the one that's gone viral. But he deserves to go viral for the way that his musicianship's wonderful.
Right.
He's a great instrumentalist.
There we go. Good. So that's the name check there for Tam Stevenson. You can find his music on YouTube. And what we'll also do as well at the conclusion of the event, we'll put up a lovely musical rendition of John Bell's hymn Cradling Song, which was written, of course, for Jennifer.
Yes.
So that'll be something to put up there. So there we go. Folks, thanks very much for joining us. My name's Andrew from the GLO Bookshop in Motherwell. And we're just getting wound up here for a Facebook Live book launch with Karen. And normally, of course, what we'd be doing with the new author was we would have them over in the GLO Centre. And we've got good facilities there for having the events, but these are slightly different days. So that being the case, we're doing something a bit different. And I do want to say thank you to, like a lot of these technological things, we just sit in front of the camera, but there's an awful lot of people who have been involved in the background of this, getting together bits and pieces of equipment and giving us advice. So I'd like to say thank you very much to all of those who have given us advice. A quick commercial break. It wouldn't be something at the GLO Centre at Motherwell if we didn't have our quick commercial break. And the good news is we're back in business at the GLO Centre. In the bookshop, our temporary hours are Monday to Saturday from 9:30 until 5. And the coffee shop opened up this week, and they'll be open Tuesday to Saturday initially, 10 o'clock until 3 o'clock. So we do look forward to seeing you then. You'll probably know that GLO as an organisation, our heart is mission. And essentially the GLO Bookshop and the GLO Coffee Shop are there to support the wider mission of GLO. And that's been affected, of course, this year by COVID-19. And the summer mission team has had to be cancelled in its entirety. Normally in July there would be loads and loads of young people and not so young people out and about doing summer mission teams, working with resident church planting teams. But although the summer teams have been cancelled, the resident teams continue to work hard, and we'd also be delighted to give you details about what they're doing. There is a new eVision magazine, and also one of the key ministries of GLO is at Tyldesley College. And Tyldesley College are really encouraging by their recruitment to the study programmes for September from this year. We're obviously quite concerned about that as all of this started to break, but they're really encouraged by that, and they've also added distance learning as well as one of the capabilities. So again, if you're interested about that, then by all means give us a shout for further details. Also want to give a little shout out at this point to Miriam. If you get an answer, if you ask a question and you get a like from the GLO Bookshop, then that's young Miriam in a bedroom somewhere in Motherwell who's keeping an eye on the Facebook feed for us. So thank you very much to Miriam for doing that. I do just want to mention this. As we get back underway in the bookshop, then we've got our Kids Corner promotion is coming up, and this has literally just hit the ground today. So one of Miriam's job today was to put the Kids Corner up on our website. So there's always really great promotions for that. And I was just saying to Gordon, we've got Karen here and we've got Gordon just sitting over there as well. I was saying to Gordon that one of the things that's particularly pleased us is the fact that so many people have been coming in looking for children's books over the last few weeks. Obviously, things have been a wee bit quieter as time has gone on, but it's great to have everybody back. So I think that's the end of the commercial break. So that means that you should be sitting comfortably now with your cup of tea and your digestive biscuit or whatever it is that you're going to be munching on this evening. And it's just about time to hand over to Karen. But before we do that, I'd just like to make a couple of comments, because it's actually a real pleasure for me. Well, it's one of the things we do as a GLO Bookshop, is we do try and support local authors and what they do. And I don't know whether Jane's watching, but I did say that her book would get pride of place up there as well. And also if Jen Robertson's watching, then the Scottish Bible Society Dear Theo book is getting there. And one of the things which we love to do in the GLO Bookshop is support local authors. I've known Karen and Gordon for quite a number of years, coming in from Claremont. They were book agents with us for some time before they had Helen Cuthbertson. But they worked very, very hard as book agents, and we're really grateful for all they did. So I wasn't actually aware that you were an author. I wasn't aware that you were writing a book even until around about 3/4 of the way through lockdown, and you contacted me to say, I'm getting a book published, would you be willing to work with me in promoting that? So I was absolutely delighted. And I says, of course, looking at it, and somewhere in my head, I'm actually saying autumn 2022, because I know how long these things take to come to press. So when you said to me that it's due to be published tomorrow, July the 17th, I was a bit like, eek! But it's a real pleasure to be able to come and do this book launch with you.
Thank you.
And here we are, just as you said, July the 16th, we're able to do this launch. I'm not going to say much more by the way of advertising, other than that Karen's book is available now, and you can still get it from Karen directly. Now, full marks to Karen as well. I think she got several substantial boxes of the books, and I think you've sold about half of them. So,
slightly over half.
Well over half. Congratulations. So that's been really good going. And the cheapest way to get the books is still from Karen. You can get them from Karen directly, and I'm sure Gordon would be glad to see them all moving out of the house, out of whichever particular corner they are in the house. But they will also be available from the GLO Bookshop in Motherwell if you're not able to get in there. But I say, if you're in East Kilbride or the locality, give the Palmers a shout. You can find them, Karen, certainly on Facebook, and also the book has got its own Facebook page as well. What I would want to say to you this evening is that as we go through the event tonight, then you will be able to post questions to Karen. We'll be able to pick that up on our Facebook page. But I'm also aware as well that some of the things which we'll touch on this evening, as we talk about Karen and as we talk about some of the things that we'll talk about here, going to things which will really touch deep into your heart and deep into your soul. And for obvious reasons, you may not want to ask those questions publicly, and that's fully understandable. So you can send either a private message to us at the GLO Bookshop, and we'll make sure that that gets passed on to Karen, or you can message the book, the Facebook page itself, which is Jennifer, A Life Precious to God, if you just search Facebook for that. Or if you're having difficulty with that, simply send an email to us at the bookshop, and we're more than happy to confidentially pass that information on to Karen. Now, one of the things which I really liked about the book, if I can find what I did with my copy, was that there are a load of resources at the back of the book which Karen and her publisher, Instant Apostle, have put in. So that's something which I've found has been really, really helpful, is the different resources and other books to read. So there we go. So that's just to mention that. So that's enough from me. And what we're going to do is hand over to Karen. I'm going to ask you to tell us a wee bit about the book, tell us why you wrote it, and perhaps in particular, tell us why it took you 27 years to get round to writing the book.
It took me 27 years because I had been working. I retired at the end of October 2018 as a psychiatric doctor working in the community in Glasgow, and so suddenly I had time to be able to write it. It was something I'd wanted to do for a long time, and the book grew out of an article that I had written about a year after Jennifer was born, and I wrote that article for the British Medical Journal in response to another article that had been written in the British Medical Journal, which was by a gentleman who, he and his wife had been in a very similar position to us. They'd had a pregnancy that they had longed for and were excited about, and then halfway through the pregnancy, in the same way as ourselves, they discovered that the baby had multiple physical problems. And the article that he wrote, he talked about how they were rushed through the decisions that they had stage, and so the reason that I wrote about Jennifer and sent that article to the BMJ was because our situation was very different. We, again, halfway through the pregnancy, discovered that there were multiple physical problems, but the doctor looking after us at that time gave us time, sent us home for 3 days, and I wanted to write an article and just see what a difference that made. So that was really what got me started writing about Jennifer in the first place. And then as I thought about it, what I also wanted to say was how amazing God was through it all. I feel, I know I can't be objective, but I feel I can be a little bit objective and just think, especially back at 27 years, I can be a bit objective and just think that was amazing. God was amazing, and just the way that he spoke so directly to us when we were faced with that news, and just how much he impressed on us his love for our child who was unborn. That was amazing. And also through the pregnancy, the way that we were aware of his presence with us. And then in the years that followed, just the number of ways that he blessed us and blessed other people through Jennifer's life, even though it had been so short. The other thing I wanted to put across in the book was that people in a situation as we were in, and that other couple were in, need a lot of support. And we had a lot of support. We had huge support from our church and from friends and from colleagues and from families. And so I wanted to say to people that couples in that situation need a huge amount of support. And as part of demonstrating that in the book, I've used excerpts from cards and letters that people sent to us, both when we were expecting Jennifer and after she was born and after she died. And the excerpts are all lovely. The things that people said to us and wrote to us were wonderful, and the words that they wrote were a great strength to both of us, to Gordon and myself. And I still treasure those, and I have them. I have a huge folder just of all of those kind of things. And the things that I said, the things that I've put in the book are in the most very positive in terms of the support we got. I haven't said very much about what wasn't helpful, but I thought since this was an exclusive book launch, I might mention the standout thing that wasn't helpful. And the reason I want to do that is because as part of the promotion, our youngest daughter, Sally, got me involved in Instagram and got me to put an Instagram page up to promote it. And I've discovered a whole community of people who've suffered baby loss. And it's been a real eye-opener. We were prepared to lose Jennifer. We knew halfway through the pregnancy that she wasn't likely to survive. And so her death wasn't a shock to us, but for many of these people on Instagram, the death has been a complete unexpected event. They've gone through, as they felt, a completely normal pregnancy, and it often has been a completely normal pregnancy, but then something has gone wrong, and their baby has died unexpectedly, and it's hugely traumatic. And then on top of that trauma, they have the trauma of people not knowing how to cope with someone who's lost a child, and they don't know what to say to them, and they don't know how to be around them. And often, sadly, the things that they say are very insensitive, or they don't say anything at all. And so the trauma of losing a baby in those circumstances is compounded by the trauma of what people say to them. So the thing that someone said to me was actually at Jennifer's funeral. And I mean, I can remember we'd had the service and we're just going through for a cup of tea and something to eat, and I can still remember the fingers of the lady tapping me under the chin, trying to get my chin to go up, and saying to me, chin up, you're still young, there's plenty of time for you to have another one. And now looking back, you know, I think probably even with maybe my psychiatrist head, slightly amused by her saying that. And at the time, I think I just was stunned. And I think many of the people that I've come across on Instagram who've lost children have had something very similar said to them. And I mean, if you'd lost a 5-year-old, or if you'd lost your best friend, or if you'd lost a parent or a brother or a sister, you know, that there is no relevance in saying you're young, you know, you've got time to have another one, and the same follows for having a baby. So I think it's hard for people. People don't know what to say, and sometimes just say what they've maybe heard other people saying. And so hopefully through the book people can see more helpful things that could be said. And you'd wanted me to read a little bit of the book.
It'd be lovely if you could.
And I was going to read a section that talks a little bit about the support that we had. The support that we had was very good, and people were very good with us. We think that in some ways that was because of where we lived at the time. We lived in Ruckazy, which is part of Greater Easterhouse. And the people that we lived with had seen a lot of suffering, most of them, and knew how to help people who'd been through difficult situations. So I'm going to read Home, which is just a short chapter in the book, if that's okay.
Of course, please.
In some ways, Ruckazy was not the easiest place to return to. We didn't live in a large or comfortable manse, but a third-floor flat in what in Glasgow is called a close. Many in our housing scheme faced enormous challenges on a daily basis. Substance misuse was widespread, and violent incidents were not unusual. We were among many who had to endure the stress of a noisy neighbour, and during the lighter evenings of summer, mass fights would occur between young people from Rochesy and the neighbouring housing scheme of Cranhill on the motorway bridge outside our block. We had discovered early on, however, that one consequence of all those issues was a lack of social veneer. Conversations couldn't skate upon the safe surface of chat about work because there often was no work. Instead, they quickly plunged deeper into conversations about family and home life. Glaswegians are well known for their lack of reserve, but Rochesy was a step beyond that. For any journey on foot around the scheme, extra allowance always had to be made for bumping into people who would ask, even if they didn't know us, where we were off to or what we were doing. We enjoyed that, recognising genuine friendliness and interest rather than nosiness. Another consequence was that many had expertise in facing tragedy, and it was humbling to discover ourselves ministered to by other residents in our time of grief. A young woman who had experienced multiple miscarriages visited in order to share very practical advice about how she had learned to cope following her own losses. A few visitors, including some nuns who lived locally, visited out of concern for us, but said and asked nothing about our baby. That was in marked contrast to some younger Indigenous callers. 3 little brothers, Derek, Darren and Jimmy, prior to Jennifer's birth, had visited regularly for hot chocolate, to watch Mr. Bean videos and to play with Duplo and Lego. They had been touchingly concerned for me ever since Easter, when we had told them about our baby's problems. When they knew we were back in residence, the brothers reappeared at our house with one of their cousins, Elaine. They carefully examined the framed photograph of Jennifer, and when on another visit they brought 2 more cousins, Karen and Brian, the photo was part of their tour of the house. They were helpfully matter-of-fact about it all. When Elaine told Karen that the photo was of my baby who had died, Karen, aged 9, asked what we had called her. And when I replied Jennifer, she said, "That's a pretty name." Such an ordinary question and comment, yet what comfort. Like any new mum, all I wanted to do was talk about my little one. So this is me talking about my little one.
Wonderful. And Karen, you're not to know this, but that's one of the bits. As I was reading through this book last night, that's actually one of the bits that I'd actually highlighted here with my post-it notes, because I thought that was a wonderful section of writing. And I think the other thing that proves is it was 27 years. If you were watching Mr. Bean videos, then that certainly dates that. So we can understand that. So, Karen, thank you so much for just explaining something about the background of writing the book. And as I say, I read the book last night. They've obviously just arrived into the bookshop, so I was able to get my hands on one and read it. And I have to say, I was very, very touched as I read that. And so I've come along this evening with my hanky at the ready. Because it's very, 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 very emotional, but also very, very clear-eyed as well. And I thought that was a very real quality. Just before we have a look and see if we've got any questions and see, maybe ask you to take some of those if you would. But your publisher is Instant Apostle, and you've worked very closely with Nikki Copeland.
Yes.
And Nikki sent us this message which she asked us to read this evening. And what she said is this: is Instant Apostle delighted to have worked with Karen in publishing her first book, Jennifer, A Life Precious to God. It is clear that even though her life was tragically short, Jennifer blessed many people. She certainly left her mark on the world, and her life continues to bless people so many years later. Sadly, too many people know the pain of the loss of a child, whether through miscarriage, stillbirth, or other reasons. And our prayer is that through this book, Jennifer will continue to bring comfort and strength to those who grieve. We're very glad to Andrew and the team at the GLO Bookshop for hosting this launch, and to Karen and Gordon for their willingness to share the story of their family. We pray that God will continue to bless you all, and of course to bless sales of the book. With every blessing, Nikki Copeland on behalf of all the team at Instant Apostle. And Nikki, I would just like to say, I've done a wee bit of work in these kind of things in the past, and I would like to say that the book is really very well put together, particularly with all the things that you've taken out from your folder in the past, and obviously being able to get worked into the book. I think that's really very well done and very well put together. Karen, if you're happy to take a few questions, we've had a few come in already, and I'll have a look on here if you don't mind in a moment. But one of the things that Colin Sinclair mentions in his endorsement, he says that Karen brings her professional skills as a doctor and a psychiatrist and is able to helpfully self-reflect. And I wasn't particularly familiar with the term, but I think I generally get what Colin's getting at in terms of self-reflection. Firstly, how much of that self-reflection were you aware of at the time, and how much of that came as these 27 years have gone on? And the second part to that question, for those of us who don't have perhaps the professional training that you've had, are there ways, are there pointers that we could use to self-reflect, to make sense of difficult situations? Okay, two parts to that question.
I think I did do a lot of self-reflecting at the time, and I think people will recognise that in any bereavement you have a mixture of emotions. And I suppose in knowing that during the pregnancy that we were going to lose Jennifer, I was already grieving in more than one way really that I talk about in the book, grieving for the non-existent perfect imagined child that we had hoped and imagined we might have. Even though that child wasn't real, we still had to grieve for that child. And then also grieving for Jennifer herself, knowing that she was unlikely to live. And with any bereavement, you have all these emotions. And I think that what I did then was I tried to tease it out, just for my own peace of mind, needed to tease out what I was thinking. And so I journaled. I wrote things down, and I have a diary that I kept myself, and also a diary that I wrote in for Jennifer, and those form part of those are in the book. And over the years, I think the other way that I mean, it's self-reflection, but sometimes you do self-reflection with the help of other people, don't you? And in terms of pointers, I would say that journaling is really helpful, but also bouncing what you're thinking off other people, and it's particularly useful if you've got friends that ask you difficult questions, or that you're prepared to hear difficult questions from friends who might help you to work out what it is you're feeling and thinking. And in terms of a pointer, as a psychiatrist, I'm not sure if this is something that I've got from being a psychiatrist or just listening to wise friends or listening to ladies on Instagram, actually, is sometimes you need to sit with an emotion and then try and work out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. If you're feeling angry, what is it exactly that you're feeling angry about? And to try and articulate that to yourself, or maybe to someone else, or maybe to write it down. And I think sometimes anger on its own is difficult to cope with, but if we can try and work out what it is we're feeling angry about, that really helps.
Excellent. That's very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so could I have a look at your phone, please? Because for some reason we seem to have lost our comments here. So let's see. Let's see if we've got. Somebody's comment, is that the Claremont vestibule? Then I can assure you this is definitely the Claremont vestibule. So that's great. Thank you very much indeed. That's good. Fine, thank you. So here is another question here, and I have to say this is a difficult one. Gillian says, having lost my closest best friend on the 29th of June 2020, unexpectedly, suddenly, heartbreaking, I wanted to ask, is it God who decides who dies? As he gives us breath and takes away breath, or is this spiritual warfare that's going on? Now, that is a difficult question.
It is a difficult question. Gillian, I'm so sorry about your friend. And I think particularly sudden deaths was what I was trying to say about parents who have a normal pregnancy and then their baby dies very suddenly and unexpectedly, and to lose a friend or a family member in a sudden way is devastating.
Yeah.
And traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do believe there is a spiritual battle, and God is ultimately in control, but there are spiritual battles that we don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
I trust God, and I think we have to trust God through these events.
Mm-hmm.
And that even though terrible things happen like that doesn't mean that God's not present and not with us. And we have at the heart of our faith a cross on, which represents suffering, doesn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so we know that God is with us in suffering and through sad times, and we, it's hard. It's a hard question to answer.
Yes. I agree with you, and I fully understand what's behind the question. And it's, as I said to you, I posted on the Facebook page. I actually finished reading this book. Jennifer, it's probably around about 12:10 last night. And as you do when you go to bed, you have things which are running through your head. Now, far be it from me as a bookshop manager to cast aspersions on other people's books, but I couldn't help comparing this book with C.S. Lewis's book, A Grief Observed, which I've no doubt you've read and many other people out there have read. And sometimes people come into the bookshop and they ask me, I've heard about this book, A Grief Observed, my friend is having a difficult time as a result of a bereavement, would this book be suitable? And my advice to them is normally that Grief Observed probably isn't suitable, because it is a book that expresses Lewis's anger about the death of Joy Davidman, his wife, and it is it's a powerful book, but it's a very, very unsettling book. But one of the things which I drew great comfort from your book was the fact that you had found that place of trust right in the middle of these circumstances, and you had worked your way through that place of trust. So I think that's actually very significant, the way that you've couched those terms and you've looked at them. This is perhaps a very, very personal question, but your family is, of course, 3 children: Jennifer, and then Ruth and Sally. I've got the order correctly, have I? How have you continued to bring Jennifer into your family life, and would you have any advice for families who are growing up perhaps with the same situation of trying to work out how to bring a family up, knowing that there's tragedy in the background?
In terms of us, I think that the girls have always known that they had an older sister, and I think children can accept that kind of thing. Small children can accept that thing. I think for us it was easier in a sense because we lost Jennifer first and then had our 2 girls, so they didn't themselves experience the bereavement. I think for families where there are older children and then a baby dies, that's so hard. But Ruth and Sally knew, so they always knew there was a photograph of Jennifer. We talked about Jennifer. We mentioned her birthday. I always put flowers on the day on the calendar when it was Jennifer's birthday, and so they talked very naturally about her. Yes. We're very proud that they had a big sister. And we don't do anything complex. Some people do and want to do something very special, in particular at birthdays. We didn't do anything like that. And Jennifer just became part of their lives. I mean, Ruth, our middle daughter, Ruth, is married, and at her wedding she made sure there was lavender as a reminder of Jennifer in her bookie. And they've both taken a real interest in the book. It was Sally that said, what about just using your folder as a way of writing the book, and use different sections from it. Yes. Yeah,
no, that's lovely, and I have to tell you that Sally says, hi Mum. So that's the marvels of Facebook. And just a quick comment in passing. Let me see. Karen, do you know John Gilchrist of Garthamloch Mission Hall? Does that name ring a bell? John Gilchrist at Garthamloch Mission Hall?
I don't know personally, but Gordon is nodding.
Yeah, Gordon's nodding. Good. That's excellent. So there we go. It's a small world. And I suppose this is a question from myself at the moment, and maybe for other guys who are out there as well. There's perhaps only a limited way that I can enter into the circumstances that you have gone through. Okay, I know that obviously Gordon has had to go through that as well. But would you have any advice for guys who seek to support wives or partners who are experiencing the same situation? Because that's one of the things you're very clear about in the book, is that so many people were very, very good at supporting you. And I suppose the side to that is, did you find that women were much better at supporting you, or did you find that guys were good at supporting as well, or is there any practical advice that you can offer with regard to that?
I was just smiling because I was remembering one particular gentleman, Tommy Bissett, for anyone who knew Tommy Bissett. Is that the right name? Yes. Who used to write a prayer for us every night and put it under his pillow when we were in Rakesi. So in Rakesi, men and women were supportive, and I think again because of the reasons I said, that just people had to face tragedies and difficulties and were maybe a bit more able to talk about those things. I think what your question is difficult because Gordon was also a grieving parent, so it wasn't that he was supporting me as a grieving parent, that we were both grieving parents. And I think it's hard for men in particular, especially when it's a pregnancy, because a lot of the support is for the woman, and she goes to the antenatal appointments and she's got a midwife and the baby's growing inside her, but actually the child belongs to both parents.
Yes. And
the grief is felt by both parents.
Absolutely.
And I think it is harder generally for men to express grief, and probably many men would maybe say that they were actually unsupported, that the support that was received after a baby has died has been for the mother, and people have found it harder to know how to support the father.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be aware for parents who've suffered baby loss of days that might be particularly difficult. Try and remember dates, try and remember due dates, try and remember birthdays, try and remember, maybe think about them when it's coming up to Mother's Day or Father's Day, and be sensitive about those times.
Yes. And I think that's one of the places where I've actually found that the mobile phone is actually your friend. There's a thing called a calendar in it, and it's amazing the anniversaries which you've been able to put in. That does mean that brings that back to your mind again. Lovely. Okay, well look, I'm just going to have a quick glance here, just to see. That's lovely. So folks, I do want to say thank you very much for watching, but what I would like to do, just as we close, we've been privileged, and I want to say thank you very much indeed to Colin Sinclair, Very Reverend Colin Sinclair, former moderator of the General Assembly for the Church of Scotland, to give him his full and correct title, but I think Colin, to yourself. And what Colin has been kind enough to do is he's been kind enough to send us a prayer of commendation, if you like, for the work of the book which will go forward and it will last as a memorial to Jennifer and the impact that she's had. So this prayer comes from Colin. Living God, we want to thank you for Karen's book, Jennifer, A Life Precious to God. We thank you for its ring of truth that allows it to connect with others facing loss, especially the loss of a child. Thank you for Karen's honesty and her vulnerability and her ability to bring together her professional insight and personal pain. We pray that this book may give comfort and strength where it is needed and help those who read it to understand what real faith looks like in a time of grief and how that real faith can grow. May this book help many and encourage them to turn towards you and not away from you at time of loss. Bless all who face such heartbreak just now through this time, when so many have experienced loss in one form or another. May this book be a means of grace to the hurting and a flickering light to those facing deep darkness. And we ask these things all for Jesus' sake. Amen. Colin, thank you. Karen and Gordon, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to everybody who is watching live, and thank you to everybody who will watch this, because it will be up on our Facebook page and will also be shared onto Karen's own page in due course. And of course, as we mentioned earlier,